Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this primary candidate forum sponsored by the Effingham County Chamber of Commerce and the Effingham County Farm Bureau. We appreciate you all being here today on a Thursday, 8:45 in the morning. We appreciate you taking the time out of your days to visit with our candidates and learn more about the process. Also like to thank our media partners, Cromwell Radio Group, Premier Broadcasting, Effingham Daily News, and the Effingham Cattopolis News Report. And just a few items of business here to give you the process for how the morning will go, as well as where you can find this information in the future. I understand that Premier Broadcasting and 97.9 will have this on their website. It will be on their YouTube channel, I've been told, later this evening. And then it will also be broadcast on 97.9 on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. So an opportunity to pick it up there. The candidates for today, how it will run is, we'll start with our Effingham County Treasurer candidates, Sheila Meyer and Paula Miller. We'll each have 5 minutes to do an introduction for themselves, and there will not be a question and answer for that session. And following that, we'll do our 107th and 109th legislative districts from the House, and that will be a 45-minute session, and that will include an opening statement from the candidates as well as 6 questions that have been formulated by our Chamber Legislative Committee and our media partners. And speaking of the media partners, let me share with you who have developed the questions for today. We have, and I realized that I did not have that up here with me. So let me see if I can remember these. Norma Lansing, the Chamber President and CEO. Julie Stevens, she's the manager at the Effingham County Farm Bureau. Jeff Long is the editor of the Effingham Daily News. Herb Meeker with the Effingham Cattopolis News Report. Greg Sapp with Premier Broadcasting. And Bob Schultz is on the Chamber Legislative Committee. So I believe I've caught all of the individuals who helped develop the questions for today, so thank you for those. My name is Eric Zeller, and I will serve as the moderator today. So if anyone has any questions at this time, I'm open for those. Any questions about how the forum will operate? Seeing no questions, I think we'll get started. Do we have a coin toss? Who will go first on the Effingham County Treasurer, or one of you?
We didn't.
We did not.
So we'll just do alphabetical.
Very good. We'll go alphabetical last name and start with Sheila Brown, our Effingham County Treasurer candidate. Sheila.
Thank you. Good morning. Hi, and I'm Sheila Brown. Don't be confused by Sheila Meyer. I think Eric misspoke by accident there. We have a Meyer candidate. He's known my husband for many, many years, so he definitely knows the name, so he just misspoke. My name is Sheila Brown, and I am running on the Republican ticket for Effingham County Treasurer. Ever since I have decided to run for treasurer, people have been asking me what encouraged me to run for office. I love this community that I was born and raised in. I love that our community has great schools, great churches, and great parks. I love that our community has business leaders that are reinvesting in their businesses. The main reason that I am running for treasurer is I want to make sure our county is run as efficiently as possible so we can keep our taxes as low as possible for all the hardworking residents of our community. My husband Scott and I feel that Effingham County is a great place to raise a family. It is my hope that someday my children will also choose to remain in this county, that they will choose to raise their families here, and that they will find that Effingham County is an affordable place to live and a great place to work. To tell you a little bit more about myself, I was born and raised in Effingham. After graduating from Effingham High School, I attended Illinois State University, where I obtained a Bachelor's of Science degree, double majoring in international business and marketing. I took a variety of courses related to management, marketing, and accounting. During my time at ISU, I participated in the study abroad program and studied in Querétaro, Mexico, where I improved my Spanish speaking skills while learning about the Mexican business practices and culture. My husband Scott and I have 3 children that attend Sacred Heart School. I am very active in our church and school. I serve 2 terms on the Sacred Heart School Board and help with many religious education programs at the school. I volunteer any chance that I can. I have worked in the business sector of Effingham County. In the last several years, I have sharpened my patience by working as a paraprofessional for Teutopolis School District. I have been left very impressed by my experiences at the district. And as a former Effingham Heart, I feel a confusing and unexpected spirit for the wooden shoes. This position has given me the privilege to spend the summers home with my children when they needed me the most. Now that they are growing more independent, it is a perfect time in my personal life to focus on my professional career. I have a strong drive to grow professionally. Throughout my campaign, it has become clear that I am the outside candidate, as I do not have ties to the current office. I do not see this as a negative attribute. People are creatures of habit and tend to be reluctant to change. For example, my husband Scott, who's here with me today, he has worked as a manager for FedEx in Effingham for almost 14 years. During his tenure, he has worked under the leadership of 4 different district managers. This company moves their district management often from location to location to help prevent complacency and inspire new and fresh ideas to their operations. I am the candidate that will bring fresh ideas and a new perspective to the Treasurer's office. As I have campaigned for Treasurer and talked with residents of our county, it has become apparent that there is a lack of knowledge about some programs and services available through the office. My opponent has mentioned she was instrumental in the creation of the Treasure 9 program, which is the property tax prepayment program. I think that this is a wonderful program. As I talk with voters, it has become clear that few people know of this program's existence. As a major goal, if elected, would be to improve communication from the Treasurer's office to the general public. If elected, customer service will be a main priority. If elected, I will look for creative ways to market programs and services available through the Treasurer's office. If elected, I will be very active in the community, listening to the concerns of the residents. Through this campaigning process, I have gained a new respect for anyone who decides to run for public office. It is a very demanding task to run a campaign. As I have been running my campaign, I have been very cautious to do this as efficient as possible. Efficient with my time, efficient with my effort, and efficient with my money. I hope that you will realize as voters that this is how I will run the Treasurer's office, with these same philosophies in mind. So as you're deciding who you'll vote for on Election Day, please remember this. Don't vote for me because I want to be Effingham County Treasurer. Vote for me because I will bring fresh ideas and a new perspective. Vote for me because I will focus on community outreach and education. Vote for me because I wish to be an efficient leader in the Effingham County Treasurer's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila Brown. And apologies. At this time, I would ask Paula Miller to come up. And if you noticed, Becky Brown from the Chamber is our timekeeper for today. So we have allotted the 5 minutes that I spoke of, and Becky's giving them a 30-second warning before their time is expired. So just if you see Becky's hand go up, that's what she is doing for you. This time, Paula Miller.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. I am Paula Miller, and I'm a Republican candidate for Effingham County Treasurer. I'm a lifelong resident of Effingham County. I am the qualified candidate because I have 28 years experience working as Chief Deputy Bookkeeper in the Treasurer's Office, plus 14 years accounting experience prior to being hired in the Treasurer's Office, as well as an accounting degree. During my tenure, I've had experience in all aspects of the Treasurer's Office. I have a good working relationship with the other county offices. I work closely with the county clerks and the supervisor of assessment offices on the real estate tax cycle, and in being endorsed by Carrie Pertzel, the county clerk, and Pam Brown, the supervisor of assessments, as well as the current county treasurer, Steve Dosenbrock, who's retiring after 20 years in office. I assist the county board with financials and budget preparation, and I have the knowledge and experience needed to be county treasurer. My current duties in the office include preparing and collecting real estate taxes. I complete the real estate tax distributions. This past year, we mailed out approximately 22,000 tax bills and distributed $50 million to 80 taxing districts. Not only do I maintain the county's revenue, but also the balancing of the general ledger, and I provide the county board with monthly financial statements. As county treasurer, I will still continue to assist in the day-to-day work of the office. Regarding changes or improvements in the office, I want to enhance the real estate tax prepayment program that we offer by advertising it to get more participation, as well as improve the county treasurer's website by including information that will better serve the public. I will always be looking for ways to improve the efficiency of the office. Why am I running? I enjoy working with the public and want to continue to serve the citizens of Effingham County as their county treasurer. I have the qualifications, the experience, and the knowledge required to be county treasurer. I'm hardworking, trustworthy, and dedicated to my work. I will serve the citizens of Effingham County to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, and that was Paula Miller, Effingham County Treasurer candidate. And that concludes our session today on the Effingham County Treasurers. Best of luck to each of you during this campaign and race. And thank you for taking the time to be here and share with yourselves. We will convene in just a couple of minutes here. We'll give a chance to bring our 107th representatives here. We do not have any representatives from the 109th district with us today, but at this time I would invite our 107th legislative district candidates up to the stage here. Well, thank you all for being here with us today. I will run through, excuse me just a moment. So a little bit of lay of the land on the how the representatives on the House here will run for the morning. We have drawn via coin toss, and I understand that via the coin toss, opening statements will go in the order of Laura Myers, Blaine Willauer, followed by David Seiler. And those will be a 2-minute opening statement, and then we will have an opportunity for questions. And as I go through the questions, I will address Blaine Willauer for the first question, and every candidate will have 1 minute to give their response. and then we will do a opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal. And then we'll go with question number 2. I'll move to my right, David Seiler. Do the same format, and then question number 3 for Laura Myers, and then we'll start back through the rotation. We have 6 questions with us today that, as I said, were developed by our media partners. And then the closing statements, based on the coin toss, will go in the order of David Seiler, Blaine Willauer, followed by Laura Myers. Get all that correct as you all understand? Okay, very good. So just a brief introduction via name and location. With us today, we have Blaine Willauer from Beecher City, is a Republican candidate for the 107th Legislative District. We have to his right, David Seiler from Effingham, who is a Democratic candidate for the 107th Legislative District. And to my left is Laura Myers from Greenville, who is a Republican candidate for the 107th Legislative District. So thank you to each of you for being here today, taking time out of your day to share with everyone here in Effingham. Again, this is being televised, or will be televised, on 97.9, their YouTube channel, 97.9. It will be up today, I understand, and then you can catch this Saturday morning via a tape delay at 9 a.m. on 97.9 XFM. So, our opening statements. At this time, I will turn it over to Laura Myers. You have the opportunity to either speak from your respective seats or utilize the podium for your opening and closing statements.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. I'm Laura Myers from Greenville, and I'm running as a Republican candidate in the 107th District for State Representative. I am a conservative, a 5th-generation lifelong farmer and Bond County resident, and I'm employed by the Illinois Department of Corrections, where I teach staff to be safe while they protect the communities from the worst of the worst. I am pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-business. I earned my associate's degree in accounting from Kaskaskia College, bachelor's degree in human resource management, and master's degree in business administration from Franklin University. My campaign is about downsizing state government, upholding the middle class by supporting agriculture, education, small business through less regulation, lower taxes, and lower workers' compensation insurance costs. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the opening statement of Laura Myers. And at this time, I would ask Blaine Willauer to provide an opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. I'm Blaine Willauer. I'm a candidate in the 107th. I'm a farmer from Fayette County and a business owner here in Effingham County. And Illinois is broken. The politicians, the bureaucrats, and the special interests have broken. We're in a moral and a fiscal death spiral. We need reforms now. Reforms that are going to bring jobs, opportunity, and values back to our communities. I know how to get this done. I've spent my entire career in the private sector. I've started a business from scratch. I have a proven track record when it comes to leading and managing and creating jobs in our area and getting results. And I think that's the kind of experience and that's the kind of leadership that we need more of in Springfield. We need to send people there that know how to bring jobs and opportunities to our area. People that know how to do it because they've done it. Thank you.
That was Blaine Willauer. At this time, David Seiler.
Hi, folks. I want to thank the Chamber and the Farm Bureau for having this event. You know, these are important things for the public to be able to get to know their candidates. A lot of you in this room know me. I'm from Effingham County. I'm a native. I grew up just outside Shumway. Went to Beecher City High School. Then I went to Lakeland. Thank goodness it was there for many reasons. And then I went to Eastern, and I went to Indiana State for my last degree. But people who know me, my colleagues, my friends, they see me as a man in the middle. I've spent my career kind of walking around issues in the classroom, trying to look at them from all sides, get my students to see them from all sides. And that's the sort of thing I want to do as a state representative, because I think that by looking at the issues from all the different angles, all the different sides, that there's opportunities for answers to the difficult questions that we face. And so I think I can do that as a state representative, and I hope you see that in my answers today. Thank you.
That was David Seiler, candidate for the 107th Legislative District. And at this time, we'll go ahead and move to our questions. As I had stated, we will start with, just to my right here, Blaine Willauer will take the first question. You will have 1 minute to give your primary response. We'll move to David and then Laura, and you'll have 30 seconds around to give a rebuttal statement. So our first question today, and as I had stated earlier, these were developed by our Chamber Legislative Committee and our media partners. Thank you for submitting these questions. And the first question is, could you offer 2 areas you would consider cutting in the state budget and why those would be your first priority?
Yeah, thank you. We need reforms to the pension and Medicaid problems, but the main thing in the budget, that any budget that does not contain significant reforms to control spending and help grow the economy is not going to cut it. Politicians, since the beginning of time, have promised to control the spending, but they never do it. We cannot trust the career politicians to control spending, to rein in their own spending. So I think that we need a spending cap that would tie the growth of growth of government to the growth of the economy. Basically, you know, if the economy grows by 10% or by 3% over 10 years, then spending could only grow by 3% per year. This would make sure that we have a stable budgeting situation, and it would tie the hands of the politicians. But then we could talk about priorities. You know, most reasonable people would agree that we should prioritize education and help for our most vulnerable, the disabled, the veterans, and the elderly, and infrastructure and transportation. But,
Thank you, Blaine. And I'll move to David, please.
Yeah, you know, the premise of the question that we have kind of implies that we haven't cut. And I will tell you straight out, you talk to people in state government, we have cut. You know, that doesn't mean that there aren't other places to cut. I mean, one of the things that happened last year is that we spent $1 billion on interest because we were behind on our bills. That was a kind of a self-imposed sort of thing that we did, but we did it. And that's because we didn't budget properly. It's because we didn't look at bonding things. And so, you know, I think that there are ways, for example, we could just cut, if we cut half of that, if we bonded it, and instead of having the whole $1 billion, we did $500 million, that's money then that could be reasserted or reallocated for other issues. So, you know, that's one thing to budget much better. You know, I think we have to look at ways to consider economizing in each of the areas as well. But I think that that's a good start, is to just have the budget to actually consider how we allocate the funds. So, thank you.
And turn to Laura. If you need me to repeat a question at any time, please feel free to ask. Happy to do that.
All right, thank you. Well, first of all, we have got to downsize our state government. There is way too much redundancy and waste of money. First of all, waste of money. We waste a lot of paper in everything that we do. We waste a lot in processes because of bureaucracy, and we must cut that down. The way the government is set up is where a lot of jobs have been created for political cronies, and we must downsize, we must consolidate some of our state offices and some of our state agencies to make those cuts. My priorities in funding would be for education and public safety services. We need to have a flatter organization. The state has a highly hierarchical organizational structure, and we must go to a flatter organizational structure, much like modern businesses and corporations. Thank you.
At this time, I'll open it up to the candidates, starting with Blaine, for an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal, if you so choose.
Yeah, let's look at the current budget. The current budget, 25% of it's eaten up by pensions, 30% is eaten up by Medicaid. These numbers aren't sustainable. We need reforms to these programs to bring things in line. 4 years ago, they did a study on, or they did an audit on the Medicaid, and they found that 50% of the people weren't even eligible. Some made too much money, some didn't live in the state, and some weren't even citizens. We need reforms, and we've got to tie the hands of the politicians. We've got to handcuff them, and we've got to drag them to the table for reforms. That's the only way forward.
Thank you, Blaine. David?
Yeah, you know, I'd be interested to see the study. You know, I don't know, a lot of the talk about the abuses of Medicaid and such, you know, it depends on the source of where you get the information, you know, because I'm sure there are some, but overall, I think the programs are ran well. As far as the pensions go, you know, one of the things that I think is important is to remember that the people who receive the pensions or are expected to receive the pensions paid into the pensions and know the pension is a promise. And so to reform it, you know, what's that look like? And there's been cuts and such made to future beneficiaries. And so I think that there's a lot of things to be said there, but I think when you start looking at the numbers, there's some commitments there that we have to fulfill.
Thank you, David. And Laura?
As far as the pensions, a promise made is a promise kept. It is in the Illinois Constitution in which we are to pay those pensions. Now, if we wanted to put that up for the people to decide, I'm for that. But the thing is currently as it is, we cannot go forward on that reform that Mr. Willauer is talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, and that concludes our first question. The second question will be, can you give examples of how you've worked with the other side of the aisle, or if not in public office, a situation where you've had an opposing viewpoint with someone and worked with them to get things done? And this question will go to candidate David Seiler for the first response.
Sure, yeah, you know, I will, I told my students for a lot of years, I would say, you know, you try to figure me out where I am in the classroom, you know, they figure out, we pull up politics and things, and they would try to guess, and I would tell them, well, you know, in the presidential elections, how do you think I voted? And what they are surprised at is that there have been, in my lifetime, I think, 8 or 9 presidential elections, and out of 3 of those, I actually voted for the other side, you know, so I voted for the Republican, or a non-Democrat, I guess I'll say it that way. So, you know, I have a history of looking at these things, and I try to be fair and look at all the different sides. I'll tell you that I oftentimes bring unpopular solutions to the table, you know, that both sides will look at and not like. A few years ago, I was on the negotiation team for the Lakeland contract, and it was when we didn't have a budget and we were really struggling with money. And I said, guys, we need to just roll over the contract and take a pay freeze, take 0%. And people kind of looked like, really? Is this what we have to do? And it's like, yeah, this is what we have to do. And we did it. And that's what, you know, leadership does, is try to look at all the different sides and find the solutions to the problem. So I think I have that history.
Thank you, David. Laura?
I've never held political office before. However, I believe that it's important to reach out to others and try to work together for the best result of the people. I believe that ending the polarization that we have here in state government that currently exists should be done. And also my experience in offices and different work environments, there's many factions within the workplace. And I've always worked to try to bring people together to get things done. Of course, there are times when that doesn't necessarily always work, but I always find that it is best to always handle things in a professional manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Blaine?
Yeah, I want to just briefly retouch on the pensions deal. I'm not, the Supreme Court's spoken on that. I'm not into, you know, abandoning benefits. Basically, I have 4 principles when we deal with pension reform. It has to be fair, it has to honor the commitments made, it has to respect the taxpayer, and it has to be sustainable for the future generations, and it has to be a defined contribution system, not a defined benefit. But as far as bipartisanship, I'll aggressively, seek opportunities to work with reform-minded Democrats. As long as the solutions are as long as they're solutions oriented and they don't involve increasing taxes on an already overburdened tax base. I won't abandon my conservative principles and I won't abandon moral convictions, but outside of that, I'm open. We have to work together.
Thank you, Blaine. And we will give a 30-second opportunity for any additional comments. David?
No, I guess what comes to mind is, when you're electing a representative, and you don't know the background, it's kind of like doing a job hire, and so it is, you have to look at our backgrounds, you have to look at what the history of it is, and it is going to be a difficult choice, I think, for people in this election, because we're all newbies to this, and so that's where you look at the professional careers of each of us and then make your decisions.
Thank you, David. Laura?
I believe the same thing as far as looking at every background. However, I also look at the values and the morals that each candidate have, look at their successes, and I've been very successful in agriculture and in every job that I've ever held. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Blaine?
Yeah, I just think that it's time to put it's time for the doers to step off the sidelines and get in the game. I've succeeded in this economy. I've ran a business, I've ran a farm. And I think that we need more people like that to step up and lead. People that are actually connected to the economy in a significant way.
Thank you, Blaine. And that concludes question number 2. And question number 3 will be directed to Laura Myers first. And it is, assuming no changes in state fiscal issues or business retention issues, what creative ideas do you have for recruiting and retaining new workers and citizens to our region? Laura?
Well, first of all, we need to we need to eliminate the corruption that we have in state government. This makes people embarrassed to be from Illinois and makes them run faster than they come in. So we need to create an environment in which citizens can be proud of. Secondly, we need to create a pro-business environment, and this is going to be done through reform of workers' compensation insurance and lower taxes. If we bring jobs back, the people will come. This is why the southeastern part of the United States has been so successful, is because they've been able to create jobs. And if you look at their tax structure, that is the primary cause of the exodus from Illinois and the northeastern part of the United States into the southeastern part.
Thank you, Laura. Blaine?
Yeah, I think that we need to continue to do a better job of exposing our young people to opportunities that are actually available in our communities. And I think that's best done by engaging the business community. Effingham area has done a great job of that with the construction trades program, the CEO program. They're doing that over in Bond County, over in Greenville now. They've got CEO going over there, and I've had the opportunity to meet some of those students. It's very, very impressive. Salem, they're partnering with the business community to start a construction trades program down there, and we got Oakall Vocational, and CEO starting next year in Fayette County. So I think that we need to continue to build on those programs, and any time that we can have the communities and the young people through the schools partner, I think that's a good thing, and government should get out of the way.
Thank you, Blaine. David?
One of the things that I think is a positive attitude goes a long way. When you have the governor of the state talking about how bad the state is, even though I read an article that his income increased during the course of his time as governor, if the governor is bad-mouthing the state, well, sure, people leave then, and so you need people to actually take a positive tone and say, hey, we have problems, but we can solve the problems. We can fix them. We can get people together and solve these issues. And it's all about kind of I think a lot of it is about the spin and the tone that you can put on these things. The tax increase that we had last year, went from, it was about 3.5% to 4.9%. You say it that way, and you say, you know what, if we don't do that, our bond rating is going to go in the toilet, and it's going to be a real problem. Or you can say, hey, we had a 32% tax increase, people, and scare the hell out of people. Which way do leaders go? And I think that leaders say, you know what, we've got to come to the table together and fix problems.
Thank you, David. And we'll open up for 30 seconds of additional comments. Laura?
As your state representative, I'll be proud to show off our district to businessmen and women and colleagues in the General Assembly. We have a beautiful district. We have a highly skilled workforce, and we have the infrastructure. Economic development needs to be our highest priority, and there's no reason why Effingham and Effingham County can't be the economic hub of Illinois.
Thank you, Laura. Blaine?
Yeah, Laura talked in her first comments about the need for workers' compensation reform, which is something that I'm extremely passionate about, but it's going to be kind of hard to fight for that if your biggest supporters, AFSCME and IEA, their legislative agendas are absolutely cornerstone on no diminishing of benefits of workers' compensation, and they both advocate a progressive income tax, neither one of which is going to attract jobs and opportunities to our state.
Thank you, Blaine. And David?
And I don't know that I agree about the progressive income tax being scaring people off. I think people maybe don't understand. Illinois is not overtaxed. I think Illinois has a poor tax structure. And that the progressive income tax actually would be a tax cut to many people. I think some people pay too much in taxes. Other people don't pay enough. And so a progressive income tax is one of the things that needs to be on the table to talk about in terms of fixing the problem. I mean, if you've got a big hole to fill, you need a big shovel, and you got to have a shovel that is used appropriately.
Thank you, David. That concludes question number 3 for us, and questions 4 and 5. As I read the question, you'll hear we've already had some comments made about these, so I'm interested to see what our responses come in as. Question number 4 will be directed to Blaine first, and it is, Illinois has more units of government than any other state. Are you in favor of reducing the number of governmental units, and which ones do you feel should be eliminated?
Yeah, this is where the rubber really hits the road on comprehensive property tax reform and education funding. We have too many taxing bodies in Illinois, and they're all taxing way too much. We've got 7,000 units of government here. That's 2,000 more than Texas and California. We have almost the same amount of school districts as California, but we serve, millions less students. The amount of government is unnecessary and it's unaffordable. And do you know that in Illinois we employ more people in our government than we do in manufacturing? That's ridiculous. We've got to see smart consolidations and eliminations. That's the only pathway towards reducing our property taxes and adequately funding our schools.
Thank you, Blaine. And David?
Yeah, this is a touchy issue because it is ultimately about local control. And people will, they want to cut government, and yet they also want to keep local control. And sometimes those are conflicting ideas. So again, I think that you actually bring people together. Maybe there's some inventive ways to do both. Is it possible that you could have a township supervisor that oversees multiple townships, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, possibly. And so you eliminate the need for one single township supervisor. Maybe school districts, if you had the idea, I know the superintendents are probably going to say, Siler, come on, but if you have 3 or 4 small school districts, is it possible that you could have one superintendent over each of those, and so that the towns could keep their school districts, and yet you could economize on the administrative costs? So again, like-minded or people with a good intention coming together at the table with all the facts out can try or have an intent to solve a problem, can solve problems.
Thank you, David. And Laura?
Well, first of all, we need to keep the control with the people. We need to keep the local governments as they are. Second of all, I would like to address the AFSCME and the IEA comment. Whenever you want to try to get rid of almost an entire city with your comments, you know, that is wrong. By hurting the AFSCME and the IEA employees, you're basically decimating the whole entire city of Vandalia and most of Fayette County, along with Marion County. So, you know, that's going to be pretty significant if you want to make huge changes to that area. I support the flat tax. I do not want to go to a progressive tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And at this time, we'll open it up for 30 seconds of rebuttal, starting with Blaine.
Yeah, I have several friends and supporters that are dues-paying members of AFSCME, and you know, I don't have a problem with that. I support that. I'm not into, you know, closing down Vandalia Prison or doing anything like that. But the fat cat political structure, in Chicago and AFSCME has a history of supporting with millions of dollars liberal, progressive agendas. Mike Madigan, J.B. Pritzker, you name it. Barack Obama, they've supported them. This is not a conservative organization, and it's not a pro-reform organization by any means.
Thank you, Blaine. David?
Yeah, I feel this is an odd spot for me in some ways. You know, it's an organism. What AFSCME and IEA do, they didn't endorse me, interestingly. You know, that they, in this situation, but I support their cause. You know, the unions support working people, and working people are the ones who are out there voting, and, you know, and I hope that they will vote for me. But you know, it is, the cause of labor is the cause of the working man.
Thank you, David. And Laura?
I just want to say that the staff member that had feces thrown on him at Vandalia Correctional Center, ask him if he feels that his pension and his benefits should be reduced.
Nobody's into reducing pensions and benefits.
Well,
the Supreme Court's spoken on that.
We're going to limit
Exactly.
comments to your opportunities to speak during your 1 minute or your 30-second rebuttal, please. And since we have mentioned pensions, I believe it gives us an opportunity to move to question number 5. And that question is going to be directed to David first, and the question is, there are several options for handling the pension issue in this state. They range from removing the constitutional provision that protects pensions to simply raising taxes to cover the shortfall. What do you think is the solution for solving our pension problem on a go-forward basis? Please be specific.
Yeah. You know, one of the things people don't realize is that they've actually already changed the pension system such that, you know, like for teachers, the Tier 2 pension system is actually probably going to be a problem for the state because it's actually worse than Social Security. And so at the point when people start retiring from it, the federal government will look at it and probably say, hey, state of Illinois, you actually have to pay the Social Security taxes on this, and you can't put that off. You know, that's going to be a problem. You know, I will say that a solution or a consideration that we have to look at is back with the progressive income tax idea. You know, if you combine the idea of potentially, and again, I'm not saying I think we have to put all things on the table, the idea of talking about taxing pensions in conjunction with the progressive tax increase, I think those two things together could be part of the solution. Nobody wants to hear that. I mean, I think a lot of pensioners don't want to hear that, but I think a lot of people do see that we have to have, you know, everything on the table to fix the problem of Illinois because it's pretty serious.
Thank you, David. Yeah, Laura?
Well, like I've said, we have to downsize the state of Illinois' government. The main problem in the government is the Department of Central Management Services. They have a lot of redundancy, a lot of bureaucracy in their government structure. They charge a 10% increase upon any repairs, maintenance that needs to be done on equipment. They waste a lot of paper. They also charge for every keystroke in which an employee puts into their computer. So this is something that is a major concern, and I believe that the Department of Central Management Services needs to be reduced by 75%. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And Blaine?
Yeah, I think on the pensions, the conversation has to start with the system's broken. It's unsustainable. $130 billion in debt on public pensions. That's $25 million per day. You know, so it's unsustainable moving forward. You know, I'll reiterate my four priorities to pension reform. Fair. It's got to honor the commitments that are made. I want to be very clear on that. The promise is the promise. Honor commitments made. Respect the taxpayers. Sustainable for future generations. It's got to be a defined contribution deal. You know, I'm thinking a 401k type system where, you know, the state would pay as you go 7% and the employee would maybe do 7%. Something along those lines, but it's got to be market based and it's got to be pay as you go. So, but in order to reform any of this stuff, we've got to get the economy going, and that's my main priority.
Thank you, Blaine. And we'll give an opportunity for 30 additional seconds, starting with David.
Yeah, there's organizations such as SUA, the State University Annuitants Association, that has kind of floated an idea about bonding the pension debt. You know, and we're still in a low interest environment where that's a practical idea. You know, and I think those are the sorts of things you could look at. I think that there are hybrid ideas that could potentially be out there. You know, but honestly, I mean, if you go back, everybody likes to say that the pension is unsustainable. Pension is unsustainable because we didn't pay our bills 20 years ago, you know, and that's where the whole pension ramp idea just didn't work. And so that's where we have to kind of rethink this again and say, how do we fix it now?
Thank you, David. And Laura?
So first of all, we need to ask ourselves why it is unsustainable. Well, the answer is because it was borrowed from by multiple administrations over several terms. Also, we're not funding it, and that's not right. First of all, we need to look at what is required by the Constitution, what's required by law to pay our bills, our past bills, and then go forward with whatever's left over.
Thank you, Laura. And Blaine?
Yeah, those solutions, bonding is a terrible idea. That's just going down the same road that we've been on. We already can't pay our current bills. And, you know, let's be honest, yes, they have shortchanged the pensions, but the growth of benefits is the real problem. Benefits over the last 30 years have grown by 1,000%. So no amount of funding was ever going to solve this pension crisis.
Thank you, Blaine. And that concludes question number 5. And our final, 6th question will be directed with Laura Myers giving the first response. And that question is, would you make a personal commitment to term limits? If yes, what would be a reasonable term limit for state offices? And if no, why are you opposed to term limits? Laura?
Well, we all hear about the pros of term limits, and that's to get rid of Mike Madigan. However, one of the cons to term limits is that there would be a lot more grooming of who is going to be the successor. So I urge the citizens to think this through before making any real commitments. Personally, I'm going to only serve 4 or 5 terms if elected. I believe that is the right thing to do, and I believe that all politicians should make decisions such as that. That's responsible. I believe in the people being able to make the choice, and in the Constitution it does say that the General Assembly is elected by the people, and they can also vote them out. But again, I am for the people being able to decide this issue.
Thank you, Laura. Blaine?
Yeah, I absolutely support term limits. I'm on record limiting myself to 8 years. I take public service seriously, whether it was, you know, through my time that I spent serving in the Army or the time, you know, spent serving church and community. We need more true public servants. This wasn't meant to be a career. But, you know, I think that if they did what I wanted to do and end legislator pensions, I think term limits might take care of themselves at that point. You know, I won't participate in the legislative pension. We've talked about the big pension problems that we have. And as legislators, we need to lead by example And I'd be curious if my opponents up here today would make that same commitment to not participate in the legislative pension.
Thank you, Blaine. David?
Yeah, we have a term limits mechanism. It's called the ballot box. You know, and people can vote out their politicians who, if they don't like them. You know, politicians will make term limits pledges like John Shimkus and then not follow through with them. You know, and it's like the career politicians are there. Apparently, people have liked John Shimkus. That's why they voted him back in. You know, maybe they've changed their mind this time around. I don't know. You know, but it is term limits. You know, I hate that I only have like, what, 30 seconds or a minute here to talk about these things, because these are huge issues to talk about. And I have, you know, there's some ideas that I think could be fleshed out about how to restructure Illinois government. One of my ideas is to actually revisit the cutback amendment from 1980. And again, I don't have the time to get into all the details of it. I'd be glad to talk to anybody. But it is a proposal that could potentially solve a lot of the problems.
Thank you, David. Laura?
Well, as far as ending the legislative pension, what you're going to do is making it easier for only the rich and the wealthy attorneys to run for office. The common folk will not have the resources and so forth to be able to run for office. So basically, you're creating more bureaucracy in that way. Also, you have to look and see where the rich and the wealthy are going to be getting their pension. Is it from the United States Department of Agriculture, or is it from real work?
Thank you, Laura. Blaine?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I firmly believe that part-time legislative public servants shouldn't receive full-time pensions. And voters in a perfect world, they would do their own term limits, but it's not a perfect world. There's too much money and influence in politics, and they draw these districts where it's almost impossible to be an incumbent. So we do need term limits because career politicians are a problem.
Thank you, Blaine. And David?
Yeah, the quick down and dirty on my cutback idea. Before 1980, what we did is we elected 3 representatives from the senatorial district. And so we were sold the idea that we could reduce government spending in 1980 by going to 2 single-member districts in there. I think what we did is we cut democracy. The way the system used to work is that we would always have 2 representatives from one party, 1 from another. And that would solve a lot of the problems. I think would bring bipartisanship, and I think it could be done at cost, and that would actually reduce, the desire to have a career politician as well.
Thank you, David. And that concludes our question session for the 107th Legislative District. So thank you to our candidates for answering questions and giving your responses and the rebuttals. We appreciate all the information. And at this time, we will do closing statements. And once again, the order will be David Seiler going first with a up to 2-minute closing statement, followed by Blaine Wilhauer, and followed by Laura Myers. So at this time, again, you can give your closing statements from your respective seats, or if you'd like to use the podium, you're more than welcome to come up as well. This time I will turn it over to David Seiler for a 2-minute closing statement.
Yeah, I'm fine here. This 107th district is kind of a microcosm of central Illinois in a lot of ways. And I look at, I've learned a lot about, Greenville and Vandalia and Centralia in my travels. And you know what, and we looked in it, and I'm from Effingham, so as we look at the area, I think that what we could do is kind of reach back and have some of the vision and some of the dreams that people used to have back in, say, the 1960s. Because in the 1960s, people looked at government as a vehicle or as a way to improve society. What we do, we built the interstate highway system. Those were federal funds and state funds together. We had the dream of creating the community college system. So across the state of Illinois, we have these community colleges. We're a model for the nation in terms of community college systems. I don't know if people realize that or understand that. You look at the number of the lakes that are dotted across southern Illinois. Those are all federal government projects, you know. And so what's happened, though, is that since 1980 or so, or since the 1980s, we've been sold the idea that government's a problem, government gets in the way. And you know what? I mean, government is a problem to the degree that, you know, that we let it be a problem if we kind of point the finger at each other and we try to not work together, and then, yeah, government might be a problem. But government is us, and so if it's a problem, then we're also the solution, you know. And so we have to work together to do that. And I think that it's important that we have, you know, all the different sides addressed. You know, I'm running in the last few elections. There's been no candidate on the Democrat side, and I'm absolutely, you know, appalled by that whenever I see it. And so I'm running because I felt like somebody had to get these ideas out there. People need to hear others' points of view. And so I thank you for your support in this upcoming election. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. So thank you.
Thank you, David. And Blaine?
Yeah, thanks to the Chamber of Commerce and the Farm Bureau for putting this on. I want to take just a couple minutes to talk about the groups that are supporting me. I'm proud to be endorsed by the political arms of the Illinois Farm Bureau, the Illinois Federation for Right to Life, the Illinois Family Institute, and the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. These people support me because they know that that we share values, you know, and they like my message. My message has been simple, and it's been the same from the get-go. Jobs, growing the economy, creating a stable environment where that economy can thrive in protecting and promoting the traditional values that's made this area great and unique. You know, these have been staples, and we need reforms now to bring jobs to our state. We need workers' compensation reform. We need comprehensive property tax reform. We need regulatory reform. We need to get some stability in our budgeting process, and we've got to deal with the pension problems. These are tough issues, and they're going to be tough choices, but they have to be addressed. You know, I'm humbled by this opportunity to serve, but I'm not intimidated by the job that needs to be done. We've got a lot of tough choices, so we better have tough, independent people that are willing to work and to fight and to stand up to the special interest and do what it takes to get the job done. And I can give you a few things that you can take to the bank about me. I'm a worker, I'm a fighter, I'm passionate, and I'm convicted about doing the right things, and I'm ready to serve. The distinctions in this campaign are clear. If you want a pro-growth, pro-reform, pro-jobs, pro-opportunity candidate, I'm the only choice in this election. So I would really appreciate your support on March 20th. I appreciate everybody coming here today. Again, Farm Bureau, Chamber of Commerce, media, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Blaine. And Laura?
I think Mr. Seiler was last.
Yes, Mr. Seiler gave his 2-minute closing. Mr. Willauer.
Okay. As your state representative, I will push to eliminate government waste through common sense government reform and uphold the middle class. The middle class is the backbone of our area. I'm a strong supporter of agriculture, education, veterans, law enforcement, first responders, and small business, and the United States Constitution and its amendments. I represent less regulation, lower taxes, and workers' compensation reform. This will create a pro-business environment. I also represent service and integrity. I have many endorsements, including the Illinois Federation for Right to Life, ABATE of Illinois, AFSCME Council 31, SMART Transportation Division, and the Illinois Education Association, which was a huge honor. Some have said that this is a part-time job, but let me tell you, we have a lot of work to do. I will be the state representative that will work for you full-time. We need a go-getter. You deserve a go-getter. Someone with the experience, the education, and the courage to fight Mike Madigan. Check out my website, citizensformyers.com, and on March 20th, please vote for me, Laura Myers, for state representative, because Southern Illinois counts. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Laura. And I just want to offer on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and the Effingham County Farm Bureau, thank you to all our candidates. And thank you to everybody in the audience here and those who are going to take the time to listen and watch us on YouTube. Being involved in the political process, it's not easy. And these candidates are putting themselves out there. They're willing to step up and do what it takes to move this state forward. And no matter what side of the aisle you sit on, being involved in the political process is not easy. So thank you all for being here and being willing to serve. And not to, we've talked a lot about the 107th Legislative District today. If you've ever looked at a map and understand how the districts get divided, we do actually have 2 legislative districts that represent this region. And we have the 107th that lies to the west and southwest, and then we have the 109th that's covered over to our east and southeast. Today, well, for the 107th, there are no incumbents running for this office. So the 3 individuals you see here today are running for the 107th Legislative District. But on the 109th side, incumbent David Rice, who is in session today, could not be here, nor could the opponents, the Republican candidate Darren Bailey from Xenia, and the Democratic candidate Cynthia Given from Olney. So none of the 109th legislative candidates were available to be here today. But a final thank you to the 107th candidates who were with us today, and best of luck on March 20th. Everyone needs to go out and vote. We will reconvene in just a couple of minutes with our 54th Senate District Forum. Well, welcome back once again. We are turning our attention at this time to the 54th Senate District. And for the 54th Senate District, we have no incumbent running in this race. But we have 4 Republican candidates who will be running for the primary, again with the election day on March the 20th. And those candidates are Jason Plummer from Edwardsville. Thank you for being with us, Jason. To his right is George Barber from Greenville. Thank you for being with us, George. You're welcome. To my immediate left is Raphael Him from New Baden. Thank you for being with us, Raphael. Thank you. And to Raphael's left is Benjamin Stratmeyer from Centralia. Thank you for being with us, Benjamin. So if you were here for the 107th Legislative Forum, the format will be very similar, but not exact, because we've added an additional candidate for this forum, so we're going to remove the 30-second rebuttal period. So we will have a 1-minute opening statement by each of the candidates, and that order has been established by a random draw. And then we will run through our 6 questions and have 1-minute opportunity to hear from each candidate, and then we'll close this forum with a 2-minute closing statement. And by order of our draw, the opening statements will be George Barber, Jason Plummer, Raphael Him, and Benjamin Stratmeyer. And then we'll reverse that order for the closing statements. You may make your closing statement or your opening and closing statements from your respective seats, or if you'd like, you're more than welcome to come up to the podium. It is entirely your choice. So at this time, I will open the floor for an opening statement from Mr. George Barber.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm George Barber. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and Farm Bureau for having this debate. This is quite an honor to be here. I'm the head men's basketball coach at Greenville University. I am the father of 5 children, husband of Lisa, 29 years, and I am from Greenville, Illinois. I have not run previously for an office, so I am clean in that regard. I'm not beholden to any political entity. So thank you very much for having me here today. I look forward to the debate.
Thank you, George. Jason.
I'd like to thank the Effingham County Chamber of Commerce and the Farm Bureau. My name is Jason Plummer. I'm from Edwardsville. This race is really important. You know, I think it's been a while since Southern Illinois had a real effective voice in Springfield, because I know Southern Illinois has a lot of problems. At the same time, Southern Illinois has a lot of opportunities. We're blessed when it comes to natural resources. If you look at our ag industry, coal, oil, gas, Effingham knows as well as anybody our access to transportation networks, road, rail, river. If you look at our geographic location, we should be a job creation machine. Instead, we're lagging the country. We're lagging our 49 other states in almost every job creation and economic indicator there is. It's not because of a lack of opportunity. It's not because of a lack of resources. It's not because of a lack of a great workforce. It's because of poor public policy. My family's created jobs for over 1,000 families in Southern Illinois. I know what it takes to create jobs. I also know why they leave. I served our country as a veteran, and I look forward to going to Springfield to serve as an effective voice for Southern Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And now we'll hear from Raphael Him.
Yep, well, like I said, thank you for everybody for coming out and for hosting the event. My name is Raphael Him, and the reason I'm running is because of my faith. I can't sit back and watch our state crumble for bad leadership, bad decisions that politicians have made throughout the years. You know, I served my nation for 22 years in the United States Air Force. I served in multiple combat arenas. I've served in peacetime. And so my whole job in life is to help people, and that's why I'm running. I'm the only candidate that's been elected, governed, beaten a Democrat, balanced 4 budgets, and now my county is debt-free. And that's what I'm going to take to Springfield. I believe in term limits, and the other reason I'm running, one of the main reasons I'm running, is I want to repeal HB 40. So I thank you for having me out here. Vote for him.
Thank you, Raphael. And Benjamin Stratmeyer.
Good morning. Thank you, Effingham Chamber of Commerce and Farm Bureau, for sponsoring this event. My name is Bean Counter Ben Stratmeyer. I'm a CPA. I help people lower their taxes every day. I help people comply with the onerous state rules that we have. A little bit about me. I'm from Centralia, been married 28 years, 2 children. My education, I have an MBA with a specialty in finance, undergraduate in finance and accounting. I've studied economics. I have corporate experience. I worked for Rockwell International, which was a high-tech firm in Centralia. It was a Fortune 30 company. And due to Illinois' poor policies, that plant that at one time employed 1,200 is now gone and closed. Worked for North American Lighting, which was a partially owned subsidiary of Toyota. I've been involved in plant closings, job moving, and plant expansions. I'm a member of the Farm Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, Rotarian, and deacon at my church.
And thank you, Ben Stratmeyer. So our format, just once again, will be 1 minute to answer the respective 6 questions, and I will start to my right, and we'll move to George, on to Ben, and then to Raphael, and then the second question will be addressed to George, and we'll continue that format throughout the morning here. These questions have been submitted by our Chamber Legislative Committee and our media partners. So thank you to them for taking the time to submit these. And this broadcast, I've been made aware, will be available on the YouTube site for 97.9 as well as Effingham Radio's website. I understand those will be up to later today, and then it will be broadcast on 97.9 XFM at 9 a.m. on Saturday for an audio broadcast. So our first question, we'll start with Jason here. And the first question is, could you offer 2 areas you would consider cutting in the state budget, and why those would be your first priority? Jason Plummer.
Well, as a Navy guy, I'd say I think the state budget's kind of a target-rich environment as far as cuts. But if I had to only pick 2, I think the first thing we should cut, because it's kind of a drop in the bucket in terms of overall money, but I think it sends along a strong message to Springfield. I think we need to end pensions for part-time state legislators. There's no reason why hardworking taxpayers should be providing pensions for legislators who are supposed to be performing a civic service. So I think that's something we absolutely have to do. The second thing that I think that we need to do is we need to go in and we need to consolidate government. The state of Illinois has over 7,000 units of government, more than any other state in the country, even though, as we all know, We went from the 5th to 6th largest state not too long ago. So we need to go in and we need to consolidate state government. That can be done at the school district level. That can be done in state agencies. That can be done across the board. And I will work aggressively to make sure we do that, because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be responsible to the people paying the bill, and that's the taxpayers.
Thank you, Jason. And George? And if at any time anyone would like the question repeated, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to do that.
Two areas to cut. I mean, I think one of the either advantages or disadvantages of all being a Republican, we're going to have a lot of similar answers. So my answers are going to be the same in that regard. I would definitely, first of all, I'm not going to take the pension if I were to be elected. And I think that when we have legislators that are making and taking pensions, and we need to reform that system, we have to be the first to say we're not going to take it. So, so I agree with Jason on that one. And I also think that the very small municipalities can be put together. We can reduce spending by consolidating there and sometimes in the schools. And I know that that's not, it makes people nervous to say that, but I believe those are areas that we could consolidate and save some money.
Thank you, George. And Ben? We'll address the questions from our seats. And if you'd like for me to repeat the question, I'd be happy to. No, we were going to run around this way and then for the questions to you, okay, and then Raphael. Okay. The question is, could you offer 2 areas you would consider cutting in the state budget and why those would be your first priority?
I think when we take a look at the budget process, I think every line item can be cut, should be cut. The idea of eliminating the pensions for legislators, that's an easy political target. The other one is that a lot in our public aid service to the fraud. I would want to do public IDs of public aid. We would need to do drug testing in our public aid processes. So by targeting those, we could eliminate a much larger scale and make our public aid system really responsible and working for the poor. At the same time, we could squeeze out a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in our systems. It is amazing that we can have pictures for voting, for driver's license, but we cannot have picture IDs for public aid and public assistance.
Thank you, Ben. And Raphael?
Yep. I'm also not taking a pension or the health care or any benefit from the state if I get the honor to get elected. But first thing I would eliminate would be the EDGE tax credits, the economic development for growing the economy. What they do is they pick up the governor, it leaves the government to pick who the winner and choosers are. So if we do that, we could probably eliminate $140 million from our tax revenue. And it would also consolidate some of the managerial portions of the school, the superintendent portions, because it's a lot of duplication in the school district, but even through the overall school district, or all the governments, even the municipalities. And we've done that in Clinton County, where we're combining different offices, and that's why we're debt free. And we work across the table and we work together, and the goal is to serve the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. This second question will be the first response coming from George Barber. And that question is, can you give examples of how you've worked with the other side of the aisle? And if not in public service, situation in the private sector where you've had opposing viewpoints and you worked with the other party to get things done?
Well, I'm a university professor, and one of the most liberal places that you'll find are universities. And so I'm having to constantly work with people that have differing views, very liberal views. A lot of times the people in our athletic departments, I guess because we're frontline with student athletes and there's some issues oftentimes there, we are more conservative in our views. So I was endorsed by independent voters, and if you look down the list, there's mainly D's and a few R's, and I'm one of the R's that was endorsed by them. So I can go across the aisle, I can work with other people. I'm very conservative in my views, but I'm certainly open-minded and able to listen to people, and so I believe I would take that same attitude to Springfield.
Thank you, George. And Ben?
Yeah, I think working across the aisles, I think is first of all, you gotta treat people as people to start with. I was the finance director for the city of Salem, and while cities and municipalities are supposed to be independent, we know reality in the politics, whether they're R's or D's. I'm the Republican county chairman for the county. Everybody knew it. I worked with Democrats that were on the city council. And quite frankly, is that you sit down and say, here's our goals. You talk, you communicate, and you can accomplish a lot. For the city of Salem, it went from an unrated municipality to an A+ S&P rated municipality. We were able to lower our debt. We paid down debt. And it could be accomplished without expanding the budget. And we kept control of our budget for several years. We ran surpluses and never had a deficit and performed to our budget every year.
Thank you, Ben. Raphael?
Yep, I do it on a daily basis. I've done it for my entire life. In the military, I worked with multiple nations, so what I learned is one team, one fight. And on the county board, again, I'm going to go back to that's why we're debt-free. It's the Democrats and Republicans on the county board. We work for the taxpayer. We don't work for our self-interest. We work to ensure our county and the people are taken care of. And that's what I'm going to bring to Springfield. One of the best advice I ever got is, doesn't matter if someone has a good idea, doesn't matter who has it, go ahead and vote for that idea and bring it forth. So, thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. And that concludes our responses for question number 2. Oh, my apologies to Jason. Keep the moderator on check here. Thank you. Jason Plummer, question number 2. Can you give examples of how you worked with the other side of the aisle or those with opposing viewpoints to get things done?
Sure. You see how I did that real politely too, so I can get along with people. No, look, I think that's a big problem we have in Springfield right now. And I think one reason why we have it is because of the way we do redistricting in the state of Illinois. I think we need redistricting reform, because what we have right now is we have a whole bunch of districts that are extremely Republican and a whole bunch of districts, quite a few more, but a whole bunch of districts that are extremely Democrat, and those folks play to their base. You don't have districts that are 50-50. You don't have people that have to bring people together to go to Springfield. So they go to Springfield, they do what their district wants them to do, and you get nothing accomplished. I come from the business world. Right, in the business world, you're not going to last very long unless you can work with people and you can create environments where it's a win-win for both parties. And that's what I've done my entire life. When I was Madison County Republican chairman, Madison County historically has been a very Democratic county. I was able to work with the Democrats to get a lot of good things done at the local level. And so that's the attitude I'm going to take to Springfield, the one I learned in Madison County and the one that I've learned in the business world.
Thank you, Jason. And now that concludes our response to question number 2. Moving on to question number 3 will be directed to Ben Stratmeyer for our first response. And that question is, assuming no changes in state fiscal issues or business retention issues, what creative ideas do you have for recruiting and retaining new workers and citizens for our region? Ben?
Assuming nothing changes, we have to be realistic that you're not going to get light manufacturing to move into the state. But what you can do is look where you have your natural resources, where you have your natural advantages. In this particular part of the state, down south central, downstate Illinois, we have an agricultural advantage and we have a transportation advantage. So the recruitment of certain jobs and industries has to circulate around those particular industries. The other advantage we have is coal and some energy resources. So therefore, trying to find industries and recruitment that take advantages of the things that are already here. So downstate Illinois has the best river terminals in the world. We have some of the best rail terminals in the world. We have some of the best oil in the world. So these are the industries that we would first target to bring jobs and recruit jobs to this part of the district.
Thank you, Ben. Raphael?
What I would do is provide a stable platform. When I was flying in the Air Force, I did the air refueling, so 2 planes coming together, and the pilot's job is to maintain a stable platform. So what you have to do to signal to investors and to citizens that we are a stable state and that our taxes aren't going to go up and that we're going to provide tax relief and the stability you need to invest in our state. And we're also going to provide property tax relief. And that's the way we keep people here, because you got to stop the outflow. That's one of our biggest problems, because our tax bill is still going to be there, but we're gonna have less people to pay for it. If we don't stop that, we're doomed. I mean, we're already kind of doomed now, so we need good leaders like myself to go to Springfield and promote those ideas and get them into action.
Thank you, Raphael. Jason?
So assuming nothing changes from a taxation regulatory standpoint or anything like that, you know, I think the big question is, why are there more, you know, as a percentage of population, why are there more homes being built up north in the Chicago area? Why is unemployment lower up in the Chicago area, right? It's because Southern Illinois doesn't have an effective voice fighting for it right now in Springfield. I will be that effective voice. I understand what it takes to create quality jobs in Southern Illinois. I also understand what drives those jobs away, and I mean that because, you know, we've heard resources, we've heard ag, we've heard transportation, right? We have those things right now, but we don't have the jobs. Businesses and jobs are fleeing Southern Illinois. We need to make sure that we have somebody up there that can work with the state agencies, can work with the legislature to make sure that we have an effective voice advancing the cause of the communities throughout Southern Illinois. Effingham's a little unique. Effingham, there's good things happening. There's a couple other towns there's good things happening, but most communities in this district have shrunk over the last 10 and 15 years. And we need to make sure we reverse that trend.
Thank you, Jason. George?
Yes, we have the best workers here in our district in Southern Illinois. We have tremendous people. The reason we moved from the 5th largest state to the 6th largest state is because simply it's not friendly for business to be here. So property tax freezes, startup fees for businesses, LLC, that was reduced by the governor recently. As I was very pleased to find out, as I paid my fee, got a call that, you know, that the fee had been reduced. Causation, workers' comp, all these things, fuel taxes, these things that were overtaxed, and it is not friendly for businesses. They are going to Missouri, they are going to Indiana, Wisconsin. We need to do better to make it more friendly for businesses to come in and to stay and to support the workers and the families of their workers, because they're tremendous workers.
Thank you, George. That concludes our responses for question number 3. And our 4th question, we talked a little bit about this and had some good discussion during the 107th around this question. And we heard mention of it just a little bit in one of the opening statements. Will be directed to Raphael. But per the Illinois Comptroller's website, a May 2016 report listed Illinois as having 8,516 local units of government. So with 8,500 units of government, more than any other state, are you in favor of reducing the number of governmental units? And which ones do you feel should be eliminated? We'll open the question to Raphael.
Yes. Well, we could start townships, like I said, consolidating the school districts. I wouldn't mess with the teachers or the class size. I'm talking about the administration portion of the schools. And that's where you would be able to cut. But you just have to look at the, 22 years in the government, there's plenty of cuts you can make anywhere. So I would start with every organization that's out there and just go and make a study, or you don't even make a study, just go in there and you start cutting the taxes, you do the penny plan, and start cutting little by little through each organization, and that's a good way to save money and relief or give property tax relief. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Jason?
So it depends on where you are in the state. I ran as Lieutenant Governor with Bill Brady in 2010. This issue came up, and the governmental layers of government are different throughout the state. So you go up north, there's forest preserves. You come down south, there's different things. So it kind of depends on where you are. But I mean, I think it's obvious you need to go after where there's duplication in government. There's a lot of duplication in Illinois state government. You can start with coterminous boundaries, right? So where there's a city and a township that shares the same exact boundaries, that's duplicating the service on top of each other. You could look at, Ron Daniels is a good friend of mine. He's a regional superintendent of schools. His district covers 4 counties. In his 4 counties, there are 45 school districts. Some of them are very, very small. We need to look at that. We need to look at the administrative bureaucracy that covers those school districts. So, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of things. I can't cover them all in 1 minute. The answer, though, is depending on where you are in the state, there's a lot of things that can be cut, and we need to make sure we do it because taxpayers are overtaxed.
Thank you, Jason. George?
When I was coaching at Kentucky, we played in a game in Georgia, and the stats were wrong. And on the way on the plane home, Coach Patino said to me, you need to redo these stats because they're wrong, and you got to get them in by 7 o'clock the next morning. So I called a couple stat people, and they said, you know what, it's going to take 3 or 4 of us to do that, and we'll come in after work. And Coach said, that's going to be too late. It takes one person with a lot of energy to get it done. And I think that needs to be sort of the thought process. We can do more. We don't need to have all these small municipalities, like more than any other state. So yes, some consolidation needs to take place. However, I would say do not mess with anything that has to do with the farmers, because that's 80% of our state. Agriculture is 80% of our state. We need to protect that and not reduce, things that would help them. So yes, consolidation, don't mess with the farmers.
Thank you, George. And Ben?
Yes, I support consolidation, but there are a lot of special districts. For example, there's, in a lot of communities, there's sanitary districts. There's drainage districts. So a lot of these could actually be really consolidated with county-type organizations throughout the state. And what we have when we get these little special districts like this, we get a taxing district. And what happens, the boards, they raise the property tax 3, 4, 5% every year. You never see what happens. So we can do a lot of consolidation, and a lot of this could actually be handled at the county level. So where we talk about the number of governments, it's not because we have too many towns, but we do have a lot of special districts. In some parts of the state we have park districts, some places we have sanitary districts, some places we have drainage districts. So there are a lot of specialized districts that we can consolidate and really be managed at the county level.
Thank you, Ben. That concludes question number 4. And our 5th question, we turn back to Jason here, to be the first responder on this question. And once again, this one attracted quite a bit of attention during the 107th discussion, so we'll see what our respondents have with us for us today. The question is, there are several options for handling the pension issue in this state. They range from removing the constitutional provision that protects pensions to simply raising taxes to cover the shortfall. What do you think is the solution for solving our pension problem on a go-forward basis? Please be specific. Jason?
Well, the pension problem is a long time in the making, right? So we have to take steps to start fixing it immediately. Those steps cannot involve tax increases because according to almost every agency out there, Southern Illinoisans have the highest tax burden in the country. When you take sales tax, gas tax, property taxes, income tax, et cetera, et cetera. So we can't raise taxes. The pensions have been, to a certain degree, they've been abused by the state. They haven't been fully funded. They've been borrowed from. At the same time, we have pension abuse. So there's a tremendous amount of spiking of pensions and things of that nature that really puts the taxpayers in a bad spot. So we need to make sure that we address all the ways that there's fraud and abuse of the pension system to make sure we get rid of that. And then on a go-forward basis, the courts have ruled on existing pensions, right? But on a go-forward basis, we need to make sure that people that are getting a benefit from the taxpayer are on a defined contribution plan like the taxpayers are, because they're the ones paying for it.
George?
I agree with Jason again. I mean, first of all, I do not want a constitutional amendment to change. I think if we said that we were going to pay people pensions and they agreed to it, they signed up for it, they worked their career, I think pay them. You pay your debts. However, moving forward, you have to have everyone be on the same page where we're all getting a pension based on what the economy's yielding. So you can't guarantee it. So a 401k would be the type of reform that I would suggest. Again, I'm not going to take the pension, so there has to be reform in that regard moving forward. But right now I say pay what you owe, and then let's reform it moving forward.
Thank you, George. Ben?
Actually, I think the pension system is the biggest threat and one of the areas that we can actually look at fixing. There are a number of ways to fix the pension system. While some people have advocated a constitutional amendment, it will be a political decision eventually. But ultimately, whether we're trying to get to a defined plan, But if the political will's not there and they want to keep the pensions, is eventually the age to collect a pension has to match what's going on in the private sector. And I hear it a lot campaigning. People don't want to work to 67 so that the public sector can retire at 52 or at 55. So eventually the age will have to be raised if you're going to keep the pensions, or eventually you got to go to a defined. There are a lot of ways to actually solve this problem. It's just going to take a political consensus to do so. But if you don't, it's going to kill all the government services that people have gotten used to.
Thank you, Ben. Raphael?
Well, as a conservative, I believe in paying your bills, and people are promised a pension, they should get their pension. I mean, it's not the employee's fault that the politicians stole their money, didn't fund their pensions. And we need to cut spending, and in that way you can prioritize the spending and be able to fund the pensions. But, you know, in the future, I mean, you work with the people who are getting the pensions. That's what you'd have to do. I mean, as a married couple who work out their problems, you work out and see what we can do in the future. I'm not going to come up here and say that I'm going to do this and that, because I'd be lying to you. So I'll work with everybody to making sure our pensions are funded.
Thank you, Raphael. And I'm going to add just a brief comment to that question and an additional question, follow-up to that. And I'll start with Jason, since you led off on that question. Very simple, yes, no answer. And I've heard from many of you, but I want to make sure the audience is clear on the responses. Do you intend, if you are elected, to take advantage of the state pension that goes with this office, yes or no?
No.
No.
And
No.
No.
thank you very much for clarifying that. I wanted to make sure everybody was clear on your responses for that. And our final question will be with George. And that question is, would you make a personal commitment to term limits? If yes, what would be a reasonable term limit for state offices? And if no, why are you opposed to term limits? George?
Thank you. Yes, I am for term limits. I would also term limit myself. I think a reasonable time period for a senator is 2 terms and a half, so basically 10 years, probably the same for the House. I don't think you can be an elected official and stay in for more than a decade and not become tainted to the system, not become involved in how, manipulating the system. So the first thing, though, we need to do is term limit leadership. So again, like in the House or the Senate, you can only be a leadership position for so long, probably 2 terms. But for the Senate position, it would be 2.5 terms, 10 years, and that's what I would term limit myself to be.
Thank you, George. Ben?
Yeah, I support term limits. 2 to 3 terms, kind of like what George said there, maybe 10 years for the Senate, maybe the legislature. But I think it should also apply to statewide offices. I think we should take a term limit also when we look at our local offices likewise. And the reason is you got to keep the changing in the offices to keep the energy and the momentum. There is a tremendous advantage to incumbency in any of these offices, so therefore, once a person gets in, they're not necessarily, after their first few ideas, they may not be getting more. But the downside is, I think whether it's any legislator or elective office, has got to learn a lot more about the issues. And I'm not for sure that you necessarily just want to cut it short, because you don't want to hand over the government to a unelected bureaucracy that can make the rules that the legislators really can't overcome.
Thank you, Ben. Raphael?
Yes, 4 years, not 4 years, 4 terms, and but you have to be smart about it, because you don't want special interests to come in and take over. So before that person steps down, you want to make sure that there's a replacement, a good replacement to be able to carry on conservative ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. And Jason?
Yes, I'm a strong supporter of term limits. I have been for a long time, and I think that it needs to be enshrined in our Constitution. So I've said that I would advocate for a constitutional amendment to put term limits in there so that future politicians can't change it. While we're talking about term limits, like I said, I've worked on these for a long time. I've heard all the arguments. Two arguments I hear all the time from people, and I think that they're need to be talked about, is folks that say, well, you can't have term limits because if you have term limits, then some unelected bureaucracy will control things, or what happens, you just can't have a new guy because I've been there so long, I've learned so much. And I think that shows a tremendous amount of arrogance and disrespect to the average voter and the average citizen, because we're citizen legislators, right? I would, it's like William F. Buckley used to say, I'd rather have, the first 400 names of the New York phone book than the people we have in Congress today, right? I have a lot of faith in the people of Illinois. I think most of them can do the job. And then I hear people say, we already have term limits. They're called the ballot box. Well, I talked about that before. It comes to redistricting, right? When you have a bunch of districts that are 70% Democrat and 70% Republican, you're not going to be voting many people out. So they've enshrined career politicians in Springfield.
Thank you for the response, Jason. And that concludes our sixth and final question for the 54th Senate Forum. And as we had indicated by our draw, we'll move to our closing statement portion. And the order of the closing statements will be starting with Ben Stratmeyer, followed by Raphael Hem, followed by Jason Plummer, and finishing with George Barber. And again, you had the opportunity to use the podium. I'll open the forum to your floor to Ben.
Thank you, Chamber, for sponsoring this event where we can get out and share some ideas. When we look at Illinois, I view the major problems really to be fiscally related, whether you're talking about a budget or taxes or business reform or tax relief. They all relate to some kind of fiscal problem. If you're a big supporter of education or a big supporter of a lot of programs, if we do not have the economic engine generating the revenue, all programs, all government services are at risk, period. So I come to you, I come from a background here in Southern Illinois, from an ag, from a small business. I've had Fortune 30 experience. I've looked at why plants close, why we move jobs, and I have a lot of input that I could help this region. So I would ask for your vote here on March 20th, because I believe from my background, my education, I'm better positioned to help in the fiscal issues of our state.
Thank you, and that was Ben Stratmeyer with his closing statement. This time I'll invite Raphael Hem for his 2-minute closing statement.
I don't know if I have 2 minutes, but like I said, first of all, I have the easiest name to remember on the ballot box. So when you go to the ballot box, you're like, who's I going to vote for? Remember, it's him, H-I-M, vote for him. So I'll leave that for the radio station and YouTube. But in reality, I've dedicated my life to serve my nation. I had 22 years of service in the Air Force, served all around the world. After I retired, I served in the village of New Baden, where I helped bring in 4 new businesses, 80+ jobs. But again, I always give credit to the business owners. They're the ones taking the risk, not the politicians. But you have to create a stable environment for those businesses to come in here. And we also need to take a hold of our society, because we've become a godless society. I mean, we're having taxpayers pay for abortions. Why? Well, so why is that happening? I mean, what kind of country are we living in when our money is going to abortions, especially when we're broke as a nation? And we have to look at what we can do, work together to create a stable environment and stop the outflow from our state and bring in more businesses and keep people in Illinois. Because we have a great state, and we also have to work on the education gap in the trade industry. Because there's tons of jobs out there, but some of the manufacturers don't have quality workers that can take the jobs. And a lot of those jobs are $20+ an hour jobs. If you guys know anybody, you can contact me later on. But so, I also want to create a government that works for the common man and woman. And also eliminate the 32% tax increase. I want to create quality jobs and wages. You see, I have 3 daughters. I want them to call Illinois home. But I sure want him to move out of my house, but just not 1,000 miles away. But, so if I can ask you for a vote for him on March 20th. Thank you.
That was Raphael Hem providing his closing statement. At this time, I welcome Jason Plummer.
Once again, I'd like to thank the Farm Bureau and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. I think this is great. We need to do more things like this so voters understand what the options are and what's at stake on March 20th. Southern Illinois has a tremendous amount of opportunity, but right now we're really struggling. Jobs are leaving our towns, drugs are coming into our towns. I'm committed to making sure that I will be an effective voice in Springfield to turn these things around. How do you turn around the jobs environment? You need to send people to Springfield to understand what it takes to create a job. You need to send someone to Springfield that knows what it's like to sign the front of a check, not just endorse the back. I don't think we have enough of those people in Springfield right now. I can affect change. I've done it before. Madison County, we've had a huge impact in Madison County. The courts aren't as bad as they used to be. The county's become much more fiscally responsible. We've elected good people, not because they're Republican, not because they're Democrat, but because they're good people. And we need to send good people to Springfield. We need to send serious people to Springfield. People that have been involved in the battle. Not people that will just talk the talk, but people that have walked the walk. And I've been fighting this jobs battle in Southern Illinois for a long time. People say, why are you running for state senate? Well, when I ran as lieutenant governor with Bill Brady in 2010, I was talking about the same exact issues I'm talking about here today. So here we are 8 or 9 years later. We've wasted billions of dollars of taxpayer money. We've seen more businesses leave. We've seen more jobs leave. We've seen an out-migration from our communities, and nothing's changed. I'm going to go to Springfield to make sure I change that. When I talk about people that walk the walk, I think you need to look at who supports people. I'm going to be a fiscal and social conservative in Springfield. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Illinois Federation for Right to Life. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Illinois Family Institute. Those are social conservative groups that I think are the gold standard in Illinois. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. Talk about a group that knows what it takes to create jobs in Southern Illinois. That's my commitment to you, is I'm going to be an effective voice to create those jobs. I've done it before. This is where my wife Shannon and I want to raise our family. In order to do it, there has to be opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity here. We need to turn it into real jobs for Southern Illinois. Thank you.
That was Jason Plummer providing his closing statement. And at this time, I welcome George Barber.
Thank you again for having us. It's been fun to have a debate. I think that given the time and history, our background, Jason mentioned signing the front of checks. I've signed the front of checks. I've raised my family in this district. I've been here for 20 years. These are all good men up here. I don't think if any of us were elected, it would be a disaster. But I really believe that for this moment in time, this moment in history, I am absolutely the best candidate for this position to represent you and to give you a voice and to give you a choice of a candidate and to give you a voice in Springfield. Thank you very much.
And that was George Barber providing his closing statement. Thank you again to all of the individuals here. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I know you've all traveled from some distance away to be here this morning, so thank you. Thank you to our audience and to those who will be picking this up on both of our radio stations. Will be available on their websites, 97.9 and Effingham Radio. We'll have this televised later this evening, and then 97.9 have it at 9 a.m. For their broadcast Saturday morning. It will also be available on the Chamber's website on Monday, I believe, the Chamber has indicated. So many opportunities to follow up on the issues, be involved as a voter. So thank you all for being here today, and we encourage you on March the 20th, go out and exercise your constitutional right to elect those individuals who we feel represent us the best. Have a great day.